What if F1 awarded bonus points? For what exactly? You're about to find out. As we saw in the 2021 championship, every single point mattered. And although it was very unexpected for the two title rivals to come into the last race on equal points, it goes to show the lengths that the teams and drivers had to take just to try and get any sort of extra advantage.
Since the reintroduction of the fastest lap points in 2019, we have seen teams and drivers take drastic measures just to secure one extra point in the championship. So whether it be in favor of the Drivers' Championship or the Constructors' Championship, teams did not hesitate to make those last-minute strategy calls just to get a little push over their opponents. This season, we saw Max Verstappen finishing off with the most fastest laps, but there were also a few incidents of drivers outside of the top 10 pitting just to steal that fastest lap point away from their rival team.
For example, we saw Valtteri take the fastest lap in Mexico, but he finished P15. Comparatively, we saw Sergio take the fastest lap at Silverstone, but he finished P16.
And then, of course, this year we had a new introduction of a point system through the sprint races, which was incredibly impactful for some drivers. You saw Valtteri and Max each taking 7 points through the sprint races, whereas Lewis only took 2 points away from this.
So for this video, we wanted to take a look back on the 2021 championship and see how it would have played out had there been some additional points awarded for 3 different categories. We'll be looking at qualifying, driver of the day, and the fastest pit stop.
Jumping into qualifying points, we would structure this in the same way that points were awarded for sprint races. Pole position would get 3 points, second place would get 2 points, and third place would get 1 point. A couple of quick disclaimers for how we scored this. When there were sprint races to decide the starting grid for the Grand Prix, in terms of qualifying, we ended up taking the starting grid for the sprint race. You get what I mean? So the qualifying points would be awarded for the positions in which drivers finished for the sprint race starting order. Additionally, qualifying points were awarded based on starting grid orders after penalties were already applied, as opposed to merely looking at the qualifying times.
So when adding all the points from the championship with the extra points of qualifying, there was a few interesting things we noticed. Notably, we see Sainz, Norris, and Leclerc would have been only separated by a total of 1.5 points. And Sainz would have been bumped down to 6th place instead, as Norris outscored him in qualifying to be able to move up to 5th. We can also see the qualifying discrepancies between Valtteri and Sergio, as Valtteri would have built up an additional 19-point gap over Perez. At the end of the championship, Mercedes would have taken nearly 50% of the available bonus points for qualifying. By adding these additional points, there would be a total of 132 additional points that teams and drivers could pick up. So much so, Mercedes would have taken away 63 points. However, Verstappen would have came away with 42 points as a driver alone.
So that was the summary of qualifying points, but when we move on to driver of the day points, we can see that this would have had a more significant impact for the front runners as opposed to the midfield. For this category, being awarded driver of the day would secure you 1 extra point. For this season, it was Sergio Perez that was awarded driver of the day the most out of his competitors, with 4 total. This means that he took approximately 20% of the total available points for driver of the day. Now, before you all start telling me that this is an unfair system, logistically, we don't personally believe that there should be points awarded for driver of the day. It would likely turn into a popularity contest, and it could probably receive similar criticism to the way that fan boost has been perceived in Formula E. When looking at the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull would have scored 1/3 of the available points for driver of the day, showing that overall, fans were impressed with their performance this season.
And now on to our final category for additional points, the fastest pit stop. This would function similar to the fastest lap, where one team and driver would get 1 point for having the fastest pit stop.
Our one little twist here is that we want to extend the fastest pit stop point beyond the top 10 finishers, because ultimately a fastest pit stop is more of a reflection on the team and crew members themselves, as opposed to the manufacturing and speed of the car.
As you probably already guessed, this would massively benefit Verstappen and the Red Bull Racing team, who accumulated over 50% of the fastest pit stops this season, boosting them up by a further 11 points. Interestingly, when we combine the regular season points and the fastest pit stop points, Leclerc and Norris would have actually tied with equal points. But Norris still would have finished off ahead of Leclerc in P6, given the fact that he had more podiums at the end of the season. But now what if we added all 3 categories together? Would we still get the same results in the championship, or would there be changes? Let's take a look.
Max and Lewis still would have been incredibly close, and the title would have come down to the final race anyway, as they were nearly evenly matched in both qualifying and driver of the day points. The main difference was in the fastest pit stops, as Lewis scored 0 points in this category. At the end of the season, Verstappen would have won by 23 points as opposed to 8.
The biggest difference in the Drivers' Championship was between McLaren and Ferrari. Norris would have overtaken Sainz for 5th place in the championship, and Sainz would have dropped down to 7th place behind Leclerc, with only a half a point separating the Ferrari drivers.
In terms of the Constructors' Championship, however, it really didn't change much. With this new point system, both Mercedes and Red Bull would have scored 67 points throughout the entirety of the season. Mercedes were able to pick up more points in the actual races themselves, and as previously mentioned, Valtteri had the upper hand on Perez when it came to qualifying points. So despite the added categories, the championship still would have gone in Mercedes' favor because of race results, even though fastest pit stop and driver of the day went in Red Bull's favor.
So there you have it. The bonus points would have made a few minor changes here and there.
But it's interesting to see just how close some of these extra battles were between drivers in areas that we don't typically pay attention to.
So what do you think? Should Formula 1 give the chance to drivers and teams to score some additional points throughout the race weekends? Let us know down in those comments. Should it be one of the 3 we suggested, or is there another place where points could be awarded? Maybe they should start deducting points for when someone gets a penalty. Or are you just happy with the way things are? While you're down there, don't forget to leave this video a like, hit that subscribe button as we're coming out with plenty of new videos this year, and we will catch you in our next video.